Hey guys, I'm Colin Silverthorn, A.K.A Dobby.
I'm Matthew Fling.
And this is Inside the Pylon. So Matthew, before we get started into this episode, do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, played 2 years in AI football, and then making my way over at FAU, playing FAU for a little time. Finished up my bachelor's degree and just looking to get my master's and play one more year.
Any ideas on where you want to play?
I got a couple schools interested in me right now, but it doesn't really matter where. It's just whoever's going to give me the opportunity to pursue my education and continue playing football.
Awesome. Well, let's talk about how we got to this point. Super Bowl matchup between the Buccaneers and the Chiefs. Let's talk about last week's games first. What are your thoughts on last week's games, Matthew?
I think the Chiefs kind of just asserted their dominance against the Bills. You take away that one muff punt, and it's kind of just a one-sided affair. The other side of the game, you got the Bucs Packers. I thought it was a pretty good game. You got the effie play call that we'll get into more, but
right, absolutely.
I definitely enjoyed watching that game more.
I think from my perspective, I was very frustrated. Not even just with Matt LaFleur, but I was really frustrated at Aaron Rodgers, and I think that he's not getting as much flack as I believe he deserves. I feel a lot of the blame is getting shifted on LaFleur. But Aaron Rodgers does deserve to take a little bit of the blame too, because on that third down play before the controversial fourth down, Aaron Rodgers had an opportunity to run the ball into the end zone from about the 7-yard line. And instead of that, he threw it into the tight window, which was either going to be picked, possibly, or an incomplete pass. And I just don't agree with his decision there. And then obviously when we get down to the fourth down call, absolutely, I wouldn't call it idiotic, but just a bad play call, a very conservative play call by Matt LaFleur.
You got to go for it.
Absolutely.
You're playing against the GOAT. You don't give him the ball back with hopefully your defense makes a stand, you know. The only thing I want to give Rodgers a little credit for, not credit, just take away from him, is that he thought he had 2 downs to work with. He didn't think it was just going to be third down and then kick it. I think they should have had better communication. Him, the head coach, let him like, hey, Rodgers, you don't get any yards. We're going to kick the field goal here. Or maybe he does get a couple yards on the scramble and it makes it easier 4th and goal. You know, I think it was just lack of communication on both sides.
I absolutely agree. And then when you're talking about it, you cannot give Tom Brady the ball back and expect your defense to make a stop. He's shown consistently in the Super Bowls and the playoffs that if you give Tom Brady the ball, he's going to do whatever it takes to close out the game. And then, again, looking at the Chiefs versus Bills game, an absolutely dominant performance by the Chiefs on all 3 phases, I must say. Really, Josh Allen kind of looked like a deer in the headlights.
Yeah, he was wide-eyed all night, you know. The Chiefs did really good, bringing the pressure. The secondary was playing outstanding. He really didn't have anything to do, you know. He's a mobile quarterback, and he really wasn't even able to run much, you know. The Chiefs were very dominant in that showing.
Yeah, no, I think Josh Allen absolutely played like he did even, a season ago, going back to last season and then his rookie year, to where he just didn't know where to go with the ball half the time, and I just didn't know what he was doing out there. Mahomes, again, another dominant performance with turf toe at that.
Yeah, and coming off a concussion.
Right, but there are some injuries and things like that we'll get into and talk about in a few minutes here that might actually have a big impact on this week's game, the Super Bowl. So, after all that, let's recap the Bucs and Chiefs season so far. The Chiefs obviously going 14-2. Their only real losses to the Raiders. I don't know if I count the last one against the Chargers in the final week because Mahomes wasn't playing.
A lot of starters are out. You know, you're already 14-1. You clinched the first seed. Why risk it? I don't really count it either. But, I mean, you see a team twice a year. You know, it's a rivalry game. It's going to be competitive. The Raiders is a better football team than I think people give them credit for. But, I mean, other than that, what I really appreciate about the Chiefs is that they just found a way to win. It wasn't just always Mahomes throwing for a bunch of yards. They found a way to win no matter what it took.
Right. And then looking at the Bucs season, really kind of an up and down season as far as that goes. They did finish 11-5 though, but a wild card team who wasn't even hosting, a playoff game. And I can't say that Brady just, cruised his way on to the Super Bowl because he had a tough game against, was it Heineke?
Yep, the Washington
Heineke for the Redskins. Team. Yeah, no, that was a tough game for him. And then the week after that as well against the Saints, that one really came down to Drew Brees just playing poorly, and it was pretty tough scene to see Drew Brees play like that at this point in his career when this was his last ride to the Super Bowl, essentially. But I just think that the Bucs, up and down all season, but their defense in the playoffs has really turned it on to, I think, another level.
So, yeah, I mean, Brady did throw for 40 touchdowns too. Can't forget that. Brady had a phenomenal year,
Right.
being how old he is, still doing things that he's out there. And when you're playing pretty well and you have a championship defense like the Bucs do right now, that's dangerous. And it was a high-low season, but
Absolutely.
the Bucs defense really started coming on late in the season, especially in the playoffs. Going away on the road every time in the playoffs is not an easy task to do, and their defense showed out every time.
Yep, absolutely. So one thing I wanted to bring to your attention, they are calling this game between Brady and Mahomes, specifically, the passing of the torch. What are your thoughts on that?
I agree. I mean, you got literally Tom Brady, the best to ever do it. And then I'm not saying Patrick Mahomes will pass Tom Brady, but if there's any guy out there to give Tom a run for his money, it's Patrick. So, I mean, I think this game really will break down to see the passing of the torch, because if Tom wins, Tom's legacy is just even that more out of reach for Pat. But if Pat can win this Super Bowl,
Yeah.
he's knocking on the door, and he already beat the GOAT in the biggest game, so this is going to be
Yep.
crazy to see.
Do you think that this might be Brady's last ride?
I don't. I think he's having so much fun. He just came off throwing 40 touchdowns,
Yep.
made it to the Super Bowl. His boy Gronk's coming back, and when asked if he would play after 45, he said he would definitely consider that. So, I mean, if Tom's saying that, I see him coming back
Yeah,
next
no,
year.
I did. I also saw that Aaron Schefter had tweeted that out about Brady. When we talk about Mahomes possibly surpassing Brady's legacy, in my mind, if there's one way that Mahomes can actually do it, he has to beat Brady, in my opinion. Because if he doesn't beat Brady at 45 years old, and Mahomes right now is at like the beginning of his prime, if he's not able to beat Brady now, I don't think you could realistically put him in the conversation as the GOAT, even if he were to win the same amount of Super Bowls. Because at the end of the day, to become the GOAT, you have to beat the GOAT. And when we're talking about that as well, we also look at NBA, for example. What if LeBron had played Jordan in the finals? And I think that is a pretty good comparison for this NFL matchup.
I think that's spot on, actually. And like you said,
Yeah.
if Pat can't beat old Tom, that argument, I think, is kind of dead right there,
Yeah.
I agree.
So, atop the quarterback hierarchy, how would you kind of list Mahomes? I mean, personally, I feel that he's at the top. And I think the only other quarterbacks that could be really included in that category are Rodgers and Wilson right now. What are your thoughts on that?
Wilson upset me a little bit this year. He's definitely a top-tier quarterback, but if we're talking about strictly this season alone, Mahomes by far, and then Rodgers. I mean, Rodgers had a great year, probably MVP, but I'd say Mahomes 1, Rodgers 2.
It's really tough to think about.
I kind of want to say Tom 3.
Tom 3, wow.
Still threw 40 touchdowns.
You're right about it. No, there's no doubt about it. And another thing that isn't actually being talked about right now, beyond just the passing of the torch between Brady and Mahomes, there's another very similar type of passing of the torch that hasn't been really talked about much at all, and that's between Gronk and Travis Kelce. I feel like for a while, Gronk was the most dominant tight end in the league. He could literally do everything, and he was kind of unquestioned. And now that's kind of moved over to Travis Kelce, and this is another game where this might even be Gronk's last ride. Who knows? If Brady comes back, he might follow as well. But when we're talking about actually passing the torch, I think it has maybe been passed already to Travis Kelce, but it's just one of those cool matchups that you get to see the former and the present.
Exactly. I mean, me personally, I think Kelce has surpassed Gronk just recently. I'm not saying as a whole career, but if we're talking about them right now as players, yeah. The things Kelce did this season is just remarkable. I mean, especially me being a tight end and seeing him going out there on every Sunday and just being dominant. Gronk hasn't had that this year. He hasn't really had a dominant performance, and Kelce is doing it every week.
Every single week, yeah. And especially in the playoffs, he's kind of kicked it up to another notch.
Yeah.
But in addition to that, let's go down and break it down a little bit further with some statistics and whatnot and talk about who has the actual edge going into this matchup. So first, let's talk about the Bucs offense and defense. Offense overall, they're very similar to the Chiefs from that aspect in the sense that they're a pass-first offense. That's very clear and evident. Their run game comes absolutely second. They were 5th overall. They were 3rd in scoring offense, 2nd in passing yards, and passing touchdowns. And then on top of that, as far as rushing goes, that is where they definitely fall off a cliff. because they were only 28th in rush yards and 15th in rushing touchdowns.
And that's crazy because they have two really good running backs.
Yeah,
too.
I agree.
Their offensive line's not bad either. When you got Tom and Tom's throwing 40 touchdowns, it's kind of hard to take the ball out of his hands, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. They are also 4th in red zone touchdowns as well. But defensively, I feel like they have flipped on a switch. And this is the main difference for me between when we're comparing the Chiefs and the Bucs, because you look at the Chiefs' offense, talk about that a little bit. They're number 1 overall in terms of total offense. They're 6th in scoring, 1st in passing yards, and passing touchdowns on top of that. So they're 1, and the Bucs are right there too. And then very similar to the Bucs, their rush offense, 16th in yards, 22nd in touchdowns. So you can kind of see mid-20s for both teams in rushing, top 3 for passing.
I think with Kansas City, they fell off a little bit rushing with Clyde getting hurt. You know, I mean, of course they do have Le'Veon and Williams, but Clyde just brought that toughness. He's more of a power back. You know, you got Le'Veon's more of a finesse zone running back. So with Clyde going down, that kind of took him off, and they had to go more. I mean, you got weapons like Tyreek Hill, Travis Kelce. It's really easy. McCole Hardman, just to throw the ball around and let these dudes do their thing, you know?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And then when we're talking about the advantage at each level, I think on offense is where we'll go first with this. The quarterback position, I tend to give Mahomes the edge right now. Brady's just coming off a week where he threw 3 interceptions. He hasn't looked the cleanest or the sharpest in the playoffs. Brady is Brady, but Mahomes is definitely the more talented quarterback at this point.
I give Mahomes the advantage, too, just off of raw athleticism. Him being able to straight backpedal and throw a ball on a dime, run to the right, throw across his body, stuff that we've never really seen before. Mahomes just has that. He's the definition of the it factor for me.
No, I agree 100%. When we're talking O-line, I think it's pretty clear that you're going to have to give the advantage to the Bucs on that side of the spectrum, because their O-line is healthy. It's great. Tristan Wirfs, as a rookie, has played absolutely out of his mind. He might be a top 5 tackle to this point. And then on top of it, it's just the injuries. The injury bug has hit the Chiefs hard.
Kansas City's losing 3 offensive linemen in the Super Bowl. 3 starters, you know. And
it's kind of tough.
You have one that's almost a shoo-in as a Hall of Famer, in my opinion, Swartz. And then you have Fisher, which couple more years, he might be arguably a Hall of Famer. So you're losing 2 potential Hall of Famer offensive linemen for the biggest game of the year.
I don't know if I call Fisher
that's why I said no. That's why I said couple of years, a couple more years.
Maybe, but and then so I think that also factors into the ground game too. I think as far as backs go, you know, the Chiefs might have similar talented running backs to the Bucs, but I have to give the Bucs the edge in rush offense simply because of the fact that the O-line plays a factor. And on top of that, Edwards-Helaire and Le'Veon Bell have also been injured throughout these playoffs. I don't think anyone has been fully 100% healthy, and I don't really know if they're going to be 100% healthy going into this game as well.
Agreed. Like you said, the offensive line is going to be huge. So we're going to see how. I mean, Kansas City, they always have depth. They're really coached. I'm not saying these kids are going to come out flat, but like you said, you know, just when it comes down to experience and just time being on the field, the Bucs are definitely going to have the advantage in the running game. But the thing is with Le'Veon Bell, he's such a patient runner. He's the type of guy that can sit there and find them holes and wait for him to develop. I can see the Chiefs also running a lot more zone this week to let Le'Veon read the defense and read his holes and be the patient running back that he is.
No, I agree absolutely 100%. And then we look at the receiving core. And at first, going into this week, when we were talking about it and discussing it, I had thought that the Buccaneers may have had a sizable advantage just solely based on the fact that they are charting 3 Pro Bowl receivers out there. You know, 2 of them that are 1 year removed, and then Antonio Brown, who's making his comeback into the league, who is arguably a Hall of Fame receiver at this point.
He had a really good year, too. I was impressed with how he came out and played.
Exactly, and the thing is, though, the more I thought about it, with Sammy Watkins returning to the lineup, and just Travis Kelce at this point is exponentially better than I think. And he might be the best actual legitimate receiving threat on the field aside from Tyreek Hill, but I think even then I give the edge to Kelce.
And even if you want to give Kelce or Tyreek the edge, it's still, who do you want to go against? You want to go against Tyreek? No. You want to go against Kelce? No. And then at the end of the day, you're probably going to have to double or leave a safety deep for Tyreek so they don't beat you, and then guess who's going to be in the middle? Travis. The Chiefs do such a well job of using their players and scheming to get them open, you know. Let's put 2 on Tyreek so we'll have Kelce come under the middle and be open or something. You know, it's just the way they do it. Or, like you said, Sammy's coming back. What a big body receiver. Last year in the postseason, he really stepped up. hopefully he can get good touches in the Super Bowl and make some big plays as well. That's another dude you got to keep your eye on.
Yep, no. So I think when it comes down to it, I kind of have both their receiving cores at the same level. I'm not sure what you think.
I give slight advantage to the Chiefs because they also got to look at the raw speed. You can give Tyreek a little dump and he can take it 70 yards. You can give McCole Hardman a little dunk and he can take it 70 yards. You can give Demarcus Robinson a little dunk and he can take it. It's just speed on that team. And then when you have Kelce just to give you as your check down fallback guy, I mean, that's just dangerous.
No, absolutely. But going over to the defensive side of the ball, this is where we really see the spectrum of maybe the Bucs taking the edge on that side of it. When we're talking about the actual D-line, obviously the Chiefs have great players with Chris Jones and Frank Clark. Both of them, I believe, had Pro Bowls this year.
Pro Bowlers.
But in terms of statistics, as far as that goes, the Buccaneers' defense was number 1 in both rushing yards and rushing touchdowns allowed and 4th in sacks. I think that really speaks to how dominant this D-line is with Shaquille Barrett, Jason Pierre-Paul, Vita Vea.
What a year Paul's having.
Oh, man, the playoffs have been absolutely insane for him.
And that's going to be scary for Kansas City. I think that's honestly Kansas City's biggest fear going into Sunday is that we have to protect Mahomes. You know, we got to stop that front 7 because it is a very dangerous front 7. So I think if Kansas City can handle that well, it'll be their game. But like I said, that's a big thing, missing 3 starting offensive linemen.
And then as far as the linebacking core, I'm sorry, but I have to give to give a huge lead to the Bucs here. The only I'm not going to say the only decent player is Anthony Hitchens, but
he's above decent, but
he's above average, yes. But
he is their star linebacker, and
exactly.
that's not saying a whole lot when you're looking at Tampa's defense.
You're talking about guys on the other side of the ball on Tampa that they have literally an All-Pro in Levante David, a future All-Pro from the looks of it, Devin White, who went absolutely crazy against the Saints. Mm-hmm. It was pretty incredible what he's put on as far as the performance is concerned. And then also on top of that, Shaquille Barrett technically is considered an outside linebacker. So all across, that linebacking core is very, very solid,
very dangerous,
and very deep and dangerous. But on the back end of the defense, this is where I do kind of lean a little more. It is closer than people think, especially with Antoine Winfield Jr. coming back into the lineup as well. Mm-hmm. Jamel Dean has been playing pretty solid for those guys, Sean Murphy Bunting. But I think Tyrann Mathieu just kind of stands above them all right now. And
Don't forget about that rookie.
A lot of people, yes, are talking about L'Jarius Snead. He's a guy that is going to make plays over and over again, and he's proven it multiple times this season. Hasn't gotten enough credit. And then opposite him, Charvarius Ward and company. Yeah. So as far as I'm concerned, I give the slight edge there to the Chiefs, but the Buccaneers now are healthy back there in the secondary, so it is not as big of an advantage. So overall, who do you think has the absolute advantage going into this game?
I think it's pretty even, but what we haven't talked about is coaching. A lot of it is going to come down to the coaching, and I'm going to have to give it to Big Red all day, Andy Reid. He's definitely – Bruce Arians is one hell of a coach too, don't get me wrong. I love Bruce Arians. I love everything he brings, but just Andy Reid's a winner. He knows when to call the plays. He knows when to go for it. I have just such trust in that man. I think – the slight advantage goes to the Chiefs because of their coaching, their preparation. Eric Bieniemy, all of them guys on that sideline, they are professionals and they know exactly how to get the job done. So I give Chiefs slight advantage due to the coaching.
Right. I'm going to have to differ from you there simply because you did bring up coaching, and I don't think there's a more complete overall staff in the league than maybe Tampa's staff. You're talking about Todd Bowles, who's been arguably the best defensive coordinator this year, and Bruce Arians. We all know how good of a coach he is. He's a little bit below Reid as far as head coaching goes, but I don't believe he's very far down below that. But overall, I think it's really going to come down to the defensive side of the ball and the fact that the Chiefs are missing these many linemen and so forth, and the fact that the rushers for Tampa are ready to get busy.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of that goes on Mahomes' shoulders, and then it leads us into talking about which players are going to really decide this game. And, of course, there's Tom Brady and Pat Mahomes, and that's who we immediately think of first when we think about that. But the players I personally think it's going to come down to is going to be those two tackles for Kansas City.
That's literally what I was going to say is offensive line play. If the Bucs can just go through and wreak havoc, it's not going to be a fun game for Kansas City. They're not going to be able to do whatever they want, and that will really mess them up. I mean, you have Andy Reid who can adjust, but at the end of the day, if your offensive line is getting dogged and getting beat, you can't do too much, you know? So
no, absolutely. I agree 100%. So after all that is said and done, before we give our final predictions, let's talk about past Super Bowls for a second here. And this is a topic I very much so enjoy talking about. are your best, like when it comes to mind of the best Super Bowls you watched in our era, keep in mind, in our time span, you know, from maybe 98 forward, what are the best Super Bowls that come to your mind?
Best as in my favorite or best as in I think?
Just give me your best and then give me some of your favorites.
Okay, the best, I'm not going to give you an order just off the top of my head though, but Steelers, Cardinals, for sure. What a ball game.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Both times the Giants beat the Patriots. Got to throw that out there.
Love it.
And then Kansas City versus 49ers. That will go as best and favorite for me just because what a comeback, you know.
No, absolutely. I think as far as the best Super Bowls that I've had in my era, what comes to mind for me is definitely the 2000 game with the Rams and the Titans.
Yes.
And we'll get into our favorite Super Bowl moments here in a second, but that game had one of them. I also think of the first Super Bowl that I can remember watching as a child was actually at your house back in 07 when we watched the Giants play the Patriots. And wow, what a game that was, the end to the 07 season and beating the undefeated to that point Patriots. Steelers Cardinals also comes right after that game, literally I think was a year or two later. Yep, and then every time the Patriots have ever lost, I've loved every single second of it. And that's not me being a Patriots hater, but I am a Dolphins fan, and at the end of the day, I don't like seeing them win, regardless of who's coming out there.
I don't think too many
But
people
I have to
like
be
seeing the
objective.
Patriots win. But I mean,
Yeah, no, absolutely. You know, when you see teams like that, they're just absolute dynasties, juggernauts. Nobody ever really favors those teams. So let's talk about the worst Super Bowls that you've ever witnessed.
me personally, the worst one I ever witnessed was the Seahawks and Broncos game.
Yeah, I have to admit, like, personally, that was another one of my favorites because I was in love with the Seahawks and Russell Wilson a year before they made it to
It was just such a dominant game where it was literally game was over by halftime. It was literally over by halftime, and when I'm watching the Super Bowl, I want to be excited. I was literally falling asleep on my couch. You know that there was no excitement for it. It was over by the coin flip almost. You know, you can just see the intensity by two different teams. A Legion of Boom was something serious.
Yeah, Legion of Boom, that defense went crazy. Russ didn't have to do much, I will say. Kind of got carried, but regardless of that fact, I love that Super Bowl because I love watching Peyton Manning just get absolutely waxed by probably one of the top 3 defenses
All time.
Yep. But the one that really sticks in my mind, and I know a lot of people feel a certain way about this because some people might call it, you know, oh, well, it was a defensive matchup. Well, it featured the number 1 offense in the NFL that year. The Rams versus the Patriots is a couple of years ago. And the only reason I put that there is because when I want to see, you know, the number 1 offense on the field, I don't expect them to put up, meager 3 points.
Yeah.
It was just kind of sad, and it was boring, you know what I mean? People don't, I personally have an affinity towards defensive games, but that game was just very, very bland, and there wasn't much. And even Brady was only able to put up 13 points. And I give a lot of respect as well.
That's where I disagree with you on that. I actually enjoyed watching that game just because you watched the best offense and Tom Brady go at it and only put up 16 points in the whole game. Yeah, it wasn't exciting. It wasn't rah-rah. But just the respect and credit I got to give to both of those defense coming out in the biggest game of their lives and barely letting either team score for the whole game, that's really impressive, man. You don't really see that too often.
Right, no, absolutely. So let's talk about our favorite legendary moments. So do you want to give us your top 5 first?
Yeah, I'll go first.
Okay.
When I think of legendary moments and I think of Super Bowls, it's always one thing that comes to mind first, and that's Santonio Holmes catching the back of the end zone. I was rooting for the Cardinals, too. I wanted to see Kirk take another one and Larry.
Absolutely.
But, man, what a play. What a catch. That's literally every time I think of the Super Bowl, I think of that. My second, it's going to have to be the helmet catch. You know?
What a crazy moment that was. My first moment experiencing something like that.
That was insane, man. And that's against the undefeated Patriots, too. Like, there is no bigger moment than that. My third would have to be that Edelman catch where he barely gets that ball underneath and catches it in the middle of the field, keep the drive alive against the Falcons. My fourth would have to be the Dyson 1 yard short. Literally, the terms of football is a game of inches. That it showed you everything. The biggest game, everything you worked for, you came up 1 yard short and the team won by 1 yard. Literally, that's why it's called the game of inches. Yeah. And then my fifth would have to be the Philly special against Tom Brady and Nick Foles. It's a great game, and when you look at it, you can literally have the argument to say the game came down to 2 plays. One was Nick Foles catching a pass, and one was Brady dropping a pass.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. It was kind of funny to watch Brady drop that pass.
I know.
Everybody, I felt like, was laughing where I was at. So, from my angle, I feel like our lists are pretty similar when we talk about it, but I do have them ranked in a couple different places. My number one stays the same, San Antonio Holmes catch. Man, did I want the Cardinals and Kurt Warner to get that Super Bowl so bad. And San Antonio Holmes put it on him in the tiptoe of the end zone, toe drag, swag, and everything. What a play by San Antonio, man.
What a play.
Number two for me, though, it's a little bit different. You can have this one on your list, the Devin Hester kick return. My boy from the U, Devin
Hester. First play of the game.
First play out the gate, returns
I was going for
kick.
Chicago that game, too, and then it was over from that.
And I mean, it kind of set the tone for the Super Bowl, and then they ended up losing. Not to mention, let's not forget the Prince halftime show. That was a legendary performance. I don't know if you've seen it, but legendary. Number three for me, I'm going right back with you with the helmet catch. David Tyree, how does he do it? Eli Manning, and it's not even just the catch itself. What Eli Manning had to
get out of that and just throw it up. What down was it? Was it third or fourth?
I believe it was third down. It wasn't fourth. I believe that one was third down, but regardless.
Still, yeah, got to make that play.
Wow, just crazy to me. Number four, same as yours, Dyson, 1 yard short. How it must feel to be in that moment and not be able to complete and fall 1 yard short.
Imagine being both guys. Imagine being the guy just short of it, and then imagine being the dude who stopped him and like, 1 yard.
You're talking about someone's greatest moment of their life and possibly the worst moment
I would
of their
hate
life.
to be on the other end of that.
Terrible two sides of the spectrum. And then finally wrapping it up for me is the Edelman catch. We all remember this one. How the Falcons blew that game, I will never truly understand.
Well, I tell you, not running the football.
Absolutely.
Freeman had 11 rushes in that game. He had 7 of them before halftime. You have a 25-point lead and you don't run the ball, but a handful of times after that?
Man, Kyle Shanahan has a bad track record in the Super Bowl.
Yeah, he does.
Man. So let's give our final predictions for the game. Matt, what's your final prediction?
I'm going to go 38-31 Kansas City.
38-31. Any elaboration on why that is? How do you see it playing out?
I see it being a close game, and I think turnovers are going to be a big play. Whoever can not turn the ball over or turn it over fewest is going to have a chance to win, and I think Kansas City is going to come up with 1 or 2 more turnovers or big plays to be able to find the win in the end.
Right, no. And I also have Kansas City winning, but except I have a little bit of a bigger gap. 35-24 to me. I think that Tyrann Mathieu and Kansas City secondary are going to make a couple turnover-worthy plays. We saw last week Brady threw 3 picks.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like that trend might continue,
Me
and
too.
you can't give the Chiefs opportunities because they're going to capitalize,
especially short
on
field.
every single one. I mean, just looking at the Bills game, from the other week, they literally capitalized every time. I don't know if there was really a stoppage where they actually were able to stop Kansas City's offense.
I don't think so.
And I think we do have to talk about a little bit about that Browns game because a lot of different opinions are circulating about that game and the circumstances around that game. End of the story is the Chiefs got it done, but man, what could have been for the Browns to make a Super Bowl in their first season returning from the playoffs?
I don't know if they would have made it to the Super Bowl, but
You never know.
Exactly.
Who
That's
knows?
what I was going to say. We'll
One
never
call
know.
changes it all.
It does.
Referees, man. We gotta hate them.
You talking about the Dan Sorensen play, reaching for the end zone?
Oh, yeah.
It's debatable. It's debatable. Yes, but you got to think about both players' perspective. They were both going for the pylon. It wasn't like Dan was trying to hit him. He was just trying to prevent him from getting to the pylon. It's one of those bang-bang plays. He definitely did hit him in the helmet, but it wasn't like a targeting or intentional. It was just, I need to stop him before he gets to the pylon. We got to keep him outside of the pylon.
Absolutely. But, again, I think 35-24. I think the Chiefs' offense will be too much to handle. And I think Mahomes' elusiveness in the pocket is better than anyone I've seen in the past couple of years, and I think that absolutely plays a factor in this game. I think Mahomes is able to avoid the rush probably better than anybody else and get free a lot better than Rodgers.
That's what I'm saying. He can just
previously.
backpedal and throw a dime, like off the back foot. It's just the things he can do is just never been seen before.
So I think that's the difference, and I think the Chiefs take it. So thank you guys for tuning into this episode. Make sure you tune in next week as well as we start our free agency and off-season process, talking and discussing about that, Stafford, etc. Thank you for tuning in, though. Make sure you subscribe to the channel and turn on post notifications so you know exactly when our next video drops. Thank you for coming in. I'm Dobby.
I'm Matthew.
And this has been Inside the Pylon.